I stick to my culture because this is the only way I'm going to protect myself.
Can you give some insight in the characteristics of that view of their culture? So what you say is that it's already changed in the country they came from, but can you give some characteristics of that? So how do you look for example, at the public domain or your behavior in public domain?
It's a very complex issue, but I can tell you, for example, two fields where we can see this. It's when it comes to education and when it comes to women. For example, this is quite clear that it's moving in the countries of origin and less here. But this is psychologically normal. Why? Because you can understand that here they are protective, on the defensive. So they stick to some principles and they are scared of losing their identity. So you have to understand the psychological dimension of a cultural resistance to a society which is perceived as a majority society, which is not us. So look at the complexity of it. So let us stick to facts and figures, and I come to your question now. And because this is what you are saying, that the Muslims should work on something which is the religious dimension and the religious understanding. And once again, Islam is as complex as Christianity, and you have trans, you have literalist, you have conservative, and you are reformist. And you have now, and this is what I am advocating now, during the last 30 years, what the Muslims and the Muslim scholars have provided the Western Muslims with is tremendous. It's very important in many, it's not enough, we are still working, but on many things. For example, when I say, as a Muslim, understanding the new European context, you should stick by the 3 L's. Know the law of the country and abide by the law of the country. Know the language of the country, because there is no real belonging to the country without the language. And be loyal to your country. Means loyalty, it's important. Language is important, law. Saying this as part of your religious understanding of what it means to be a European and to be a Muslim at the same time.
So that's the part that you say, that's the part you can change as a Muslim. That's the part, or that you adopt or should behave like, or in those 3 L's.
No, it's not something that, it's a religious understanding of your new, the shaping of your new European identity, because once again, I'm always saying that we have multiple identities. Now, when it comes to religions, and when it comes to Islam, there are principles that are not going to change. The fact that we believe in one God, the fact that we pray 5 times a day, the fact that we fast, and no Western country is asking us to go against this. This is accepted everywhere. And this is why I say to the Muslims, you abide by the law of the country, because the principles of your religion, no one is challenging this. You can be a good Muslim and a good Dutch citizen.
But I think in everyday life, you know, if you look at schools, for example, I mean, this defensive attitude, and I think that was what you were asking, is often creates problems of communication. Or, for example, parents that have a great problem in sending their girls to mixed swimming lessons. That sort of thing, you know. Defensive behavior, not trusting too much the outside world, thinking, you know, we're losing ourselves, we're losing our identity, we're not living up to our idea of what it means to be a good Muslim if we send our girls, you know, to mixed swimming lessons, for example. And this creates, of course, in everyday life, or, you know, in what I read and witness, you know, in some areas in our cities, where, you know, girls are very defensive in the public domain, you know, wouldn't greet someone else because it's not decent to do that. That sort of practical miscommunication in every day, I think that really is creating a lot of frustration and also a sense of loss on the part of the native population, who thinks we are losing some of our traditions that were dear to us, and creates also a sort of defensive reflex.
So
and that's of course also the dialogue also for this afternoon. Just a simple question: why? Because you're now filling it in, saying, okay, because it's maybe not decent for a girl to do that, but people sometimes just think it's because we somewhere hear that it's not decent, or that Muslims think it's not decent, or whatever. But most of the time we don't know really why. So we want to have some more insight in what is the worldview, the perspective, the reason to behave defensive. And this part's sociological, in fact, the migration part, as you mentioned. But there's this feeling that it has something to do with being a Muslim, and that as a Muslim you have a sort of worldview that that leads to practical negotiation with the doctor, in the schools, at the swimming lessons. And we want to know
but
why.
I was coming to that. I was coming to that because you asked me what is not changeable.